Hi and welcome everyone. My name's Stephen Ridgway and this is Talking VTE number 41 for the 9th of December 2015, our very last podcast for the year. So perhaps we might go around and do introductions and start with Robin here.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Maybe Michael.
Michael Coughlin here in Adelaide. Hi there.
A cameo by your daughter as usual. It wouldn't be a Talking VTE episode without your daughter in it, I don't think.
She thought she was going to get in there before, but there was no talking, so I don't think her fit to come up. So there we go. Do you want to say hello?
Hi. Hi.
Hello. How are you? Welcome.
Cheeky. That's how she is. Cheeky. Don't know where she gets it from.
Couldn't possibly imagine.
Hi, Alison.
So welcome, Alison.
Mysterious.
And Melanie.
Hi, Melanie from North Coast, New South Wales.
Ah, hello.
Hi, Alison.
How are you?
Good.
I've got. Do we all have one of these? Not maybe the whole bottle.
We do have a drink.
Who has a duck? Someone has a duck.
It is.
Yeah, I can hear that.
Is it
Who
my
is it?
phone or something? Sometimes there's interference. I don't have a duck. There's no quacking around.
It seemed to have come with you, Alison, but
Yeah, I've moved my phones. I'll turn my phone off. Sorry, my microphone off when I'm not talking. And I did move my phone. Sometimes that causes interference. So I'll stop quacking.
It's all right. All right. Well, I think what we had on the agenda was just initially reflections for 2015. So who would like to kick off there? 2015 was an exciting year.
Oh, it's
I was thinking about that today as I was walking and realised that because
I think it's Mr. Cloud.
that I no longer have a normal 9 to 5, week in, week out job, I have a great deal of trouble actually thinking what happened this year. It's quite interesting. The year's a bit of a blur. So I can't say in term 1 this happened, term 2 and that happened, because I've been outside of a lot of stuff that I used to track religiously, and I find myself thinking, well, I don't know whether nothing's coming to mind about what happened this year. I'm not saying it was good or bad. It's just that it was a very different year, and I think I'm on a different track where
Different wavelength.
like trends. Sorry, Steph?
On a different wavelength, on a different parallel universe.
Oh, yeah, wavelength, parallel universe, whatever. It's certainly I don't actively monitor trends in the education space anymore, and I don't.
There aren't any, Michael.
Hey,
It's stagnated.
It has.
There are trends. It's just down.
It's just down.
that's how I'll kick it off. I don't know what happened.
Oh well, fair enough. Anyone else want to proffer reflections on 2015?
I can only speak from the point of view of, I suppose, the change in New South Wales debt, where TAFE and apprenticeships and traineeships and vocational education funding, Smart and Skilled, has moved into Department of Industry. And that's been a big shift, and I think it's going to be a very good shift. I think there's been a lot of soul searching, I suspect, though no one's willing to admit it, about Smart and Skilled not being, and I've heard some very unkind alternative names for it.
Just bad public policy would be a good one.
Dumber was one. um, it just goes to show you can throw a lot of time and effort at something and still get it massively wrong by over trying to control the market, and it just didn't take off the way it was expected to do. So now they've kind of totally rewritten the rule book. The cap for apprenticeships and traineeships next year, well, for traineeships training, will be $1,000 as opposed to what could have been up to $3,000 or $4,000 in some cases. So that's going to be a huge shift. Numbers are down. Numbers of traineeships are down this year, so that could see make a resurgence there. They're throwing money at pre-vocational training, but even though it's now in a new industry, and industry, I think, are very delighted to have skills and the budget that it brings with it, I suspect that they're still struggling with how to integrate skills into their policy. They've made 2 new appointments at the senior level, so I guess it's a case of watching this space. But from where I sit now, I don't get to know much about the inner workings of the policy and the rationales around some of the changes. But I think no one really quite knows what to do, which is a bit frightening.
Well, we sort of figured that out. It's been a sort of, ideas vacuum and just policy mismanagement of the most mind-boggling form. I mean, the consumers must be just bewildered. 1 year it costs, as you say, X, the next year it's half the price.
Mm-hmm.
We're told that we're not allowed to tell re-enrolling students if they withdraw and re-enroll, it'll cost them, significantly less under our contract with Smart School. We're not allowed to reveal this to customers. They created this incredibly complex, system that constantly changed on the fly as it was introduced. No one understood it. Certainly the customers didn't. And now they've done complete U-turns on it. I mean, it's a disgrace.
Well, it wasn't done on the fly. It was 4 years, 3 years or more.
That makes it even worse.
I know. And some of those people are missing in action now. And one of the problems too is that we've had a change from faculty of department, plus a whole sort of restructure that's been on hold for nearly 18 months in Oxford Street. And when you have that, you have paralysis, as you know. In TAFE, the same thing.
I mean, it's had enormous effects in TAFE. I mean, some of our campuses are ghost towns. Sort of spot the student. You can't help be conspiratorial about it if it wasn't a policy designed to actually destroy the public provider.
I don't think they had a vision of what this would actually look and feel like on the ground. It was all done from my perspective, it feels like it was done from a theoretical framework, but without there was no trialling, there was no testing, there was no focus grouping that I'm aware of. Could have been, but there was no image of what this would actually look like in action, of how it was actually going to work.
Unbelievable. It's actually unbelievable. It's actually criminal. It's the word I'd use, but anyway.
And of course.
Can I just... Sorry, go on, Melanie. Sorry, I'll shut up.
I couldn't say what I've just said now in a public forum, even within the department.
I think what's happened in New South Wales is pretty horrific, and just your student information or student management system costing $1 billion, and it's just been one big bundle, is incredible. But in light of that, there's the national issue of the fee help and the scenarios of which I hope Brad Breach doesn't mind me. Sure, well, maybe make it more broadly, of a person that we all know very well. Somebody in their family was approached and signed up to do a diploma or do a degree that's going to cost them $36,000, but they're a pensioner and they're in their 60s, so the chances of them ever earning the threshold of 50 odd thousand is very little. This person's got a computer. They don't want the training, but anyway, they're helping this guy out who's signed them up. And Brad approached them, a local person, and said, you know, how much do you get for signing up these people for $30,000 degrees? And this person gets $150 for every person who signs up, and just is quite blasé about the fact that it's government money, and so, you know, government money's not real money and not really our taxpayers' money, and that the floodgates that have opened is probably bigger than Niagara. So if you think there's been financial mismanagement happening in TAFE, New South Wales, the amount of taxpayers' money that's been wasted on non-existent students or students that have been inappropriately signed up is yet to be uncovered.
Oh, look, I agree with you, Alison. I mean, it's a horrific, really. We're talking nigh on nearly $1 trillion.
It puts pink bats in perspective.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I don't think there's nearly as much money. Unfortunately, people lost their lives in that. But in terms of, you know, poor policy, planning, to not see how easily it was going to be rorted.
Yeah,
So,
well.
In maybe a little bit away from trends of 2015, what I was thinking about was perhaps more about 2016. And for me, that made me think back about 10 years, around 2006, 2007, when we started playing in spaces like Twitter and Facebook, where nobody had heard of those kinds of terms. I remember when Howard Airy said to me, you need to log into Twitter, and that I did, and I followed him, and all I could see was this big long line, you know, list of him just talking ramble, and I just didn't get it. But obviously 10 years down the track, all that space has changed quite a lot, and I didn't know if, you know, that was something other people had thought about, you know, their journey with their social media lives. Michael, your microphone's not on, yeah? I think we thought Michael was speaking there, but his microphone wasn't on. So do we still play in those spaces? Do we play with them for educational, you know, PLE stuff? Or sorry, Michael, you go.
Just being cheeky and adding, and now you run workshops on how to use Twitter for business.
And that, you know, that it is a good form of medium for businesses to raise their profile. So, and for individuals as well to raise their profile. I don't know if people understand it being an educational kind of PLE tool as best as it could be used.
Yeah, I don't. Look, as a PLE, no. Probably Alan Levine and DS106 and what's the fellow's name? No, I can't think of his name at the moment. But anyway,
Mark Pesky.
No. The fellow, I'll think of his name in a moment. You went to New Zealand with him, Michael.
Stephen Downs?
Stephen Downs, yeah. He still maintains the flame there around the true, you know, open PLE. But certainly, you know, in our area, I think social media is used on, you know, around the edges. Facebook groups and the like are quite, much. Yeah.
Not much.
Mm. But you know, Twitter, I don't. Vet teachers never really got Twitter. I ran a lot of workshops on it, but I don't know anyone who actually really got it.
In the unis, yes, but they're not in vet. Not in vet.
I think a few people use Facebook with their students.
Yeah.
I've seen it used. I've used it myself. I did some training up in what they call the APY lands, which is like an indigenous, I don't know, zone. I that you call it, and they're very Facebook focused and not very perhaps really care about formal education in a different kind, in a different kind of way. But so I kind of combined it, and they loved it. They, you put stuff into a closed group and got them to look at videos and got them to kind of write stuff in Facebook, and they were quite engaged. And the people that I was with found it funny because normally where they have to, keep them in the class, they had to kind of get them out the class. So there's that respect. And I've also seen somebody use it really well with ex-students. So she kind of uses it as a way of helping them find jobs, helping them share information with existing and outgoing students. Even, she posted up a job and then got feedback about some of the level of the cover letters that had been sent and how they weren't up to a standard, and then she proceeded to kind of do this lesson through this Facebook group on how to write a good cover letter. Now this is all all outside of what she's paid to do. This is because she knows this is good for her students, and maybe there's some intrinsic stuff that she gets out of it too. So I do see it used in different kinds of ways. Maybe not Twitter so much because it is so free flowing, but Facebook certainly.
And public, which tends to freak educators out.
Yeah.
Facebook groups.
No, Twitter. Twitter's public, so I think that is a concern for a lot of educators.
But LinkedIn, you see a lot of massive, like the Verg Training run a LinkedIn group that I think has something like 15,000 members. So in terms of a professional network or asking questions of each other, we're seeing some LinkedIn groups functioning quite well.
Yeah, LinkedIn would be quite good for that.
What about your own PLE?
You asking me?
Anybody?
Oh, anyway.
How are we maintaining that?
Non-existent.
You sound a tad disengaged, Robin.
Well, yeah, I just think it's non-existent. I think we've gone down the gurgler, quite frankly. I feel as though I am about to, leave a system that I've spent 25 years in, and I'm leaving it in a worse state than when I came in. So, I don't think in where I am. I try to use Scoop It. I try to use a Facebook group. What else do we use?
Well, Yammer was there too.
A little bit of Yammer, but it's a real struggle, really.
Do you think that's reflective of the current state of morale within TAFE and other RTOs?
Oh, look, partially, for sure. But there is no support for any of that anymore. And increasingly, there is no one in positions who will support that kind of thing. So I don't know where we're going. I don't think it's looking good from here on in for that kind of stuff. Everyone in New South Wales that cares anything about student-centred learning is either being made redundant or is leaving. So what's left are bureaucrats.
Yes.
Or managerialists.
No, bureaucrats.
Sycophants and bullies.
I think also, from my experience, because I still do a bit in the local TAFE here, is that we have never been under this amount of pressure to maintain our jobs in the whole time that I've been there. So there's some sort of kind of continuous reminder that if we don't perform or be more productive, and so people are working ridiculous hours, 12, 14, 16-hour days in order to try and get more productive, whatever that may mean, and therefore still maintain their jobs. So I think people are under a lot of pressure to just, that they don't have time to be creative, and even if they wanted to build that skill base, they just don't have the luxury of the time to do it, which is ridiculous. I mean, Michael will be testament to it. TAFE doesn't even have a teaching and learning unit. Why would you have a teaching and learning unit in an educational sense?
Well, we're heading the same way.
So I think sometimes they forget their core business.
I think they have forgotten the core business.
It's a certificate factory.
Yeah, a vending machine, somebody called it, an online vending machine.
Well, the focus is definitely not on students. Can you remember the days when the focus was student-centred learning, where, everyone's focus was on, our first consideration were the learners. Can you remember that? It's gone. It's gone.
I think there's still a lot of passionate educators. I think there's people who are still, their heart really is there for the students. So there's lots that aren't.
I think they're getting burnt out.
And they don't have strong skill
They're all
sets.
the ones putting their hands up for the redundancies because they just can't cope with it anymore.
And the ones that are left just don't have some of the skill sets to understand what learner-centred is. They understand how to kind of do instructional, they understand how to, especially in the online space, how to do a lot of kind of quizzes and short answer type stuff, but they don't have the experience or the support to understand what student-centred really means. I mean, I know within the local one here, they're more worried about whether it fits into a system than it fits for a human. And that's probably brings us all the way back to the
Absolutely.
And they have to. I kind of try to remind them that we're here for the humans and not the systems.
Mm.
Well, I'll have a chance to speak with David Collins. He's coming up to do some presentations on Smart and Skilled, the new version, on Friday. So if there's any questions or suggestions you'd like me to pass on, I'm happy to do so. You can speak them now or send me an email. And I'll probably have you here for all of 5 minutes. Not that I think it'll take a blind bit of notice.
I think it's too late.
I'm with you, Robin.
But it can't be that, because we still have people who need training. We still have people who need work. So there has to be a solution. It's just
I think there will be a solution, but I think in order to get to that solution, the whole system is going to crash. And it will be, hopefully, there will be some kind of phoenix that rises from it, but I think we're too far gone right now, and I think the only way out is a totally new start. I don't know what that will look like, but
right, Robin. I mean, if you think back, when we were all excited about VET, Anta was leading it. Anta set guidelines. Anta set agenda. It was a national drive, interpreted in different ways, but it still had a cohesion. There is no national vision or policy or guidance now.
no, well, that's for certain. Yeah, absolutely. And now we have a Defence Force person leading education in New South Wales. That's right.
Maybe I've just put in the text chat an email that's just come from Leo regarding this session.
Leo?
I think, Mr. Gaggle.
Oh, right.
So he's just stepped off a plane. Next year, maybe have a great Christmas and New Year. But I think it's also what's happening is there's no money, right? I think that's. So it sounds like there
is money though, Alison.
Well, not in Victoria and South Australia. So if you guys have got some, you can pour over to South Australia. And what was also interesting is when I was speaking with Brad recently, he said in Victoria that their vet sector is a contracting vet sector, and that the criteria to get government funding is that to a point that anybody and everybody who's been able to attract government funding has basically had it, and so there's very few people now that can actually get government funding. So they couldn't even increase their numbers if there was more government funding for training unless they changed the criteria.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, well, it was all squandered, wasn't it? I mean, on the vocations and the like.
Personal trainers.
Personal trainers, that's right.
Cert 2 in business in South Australia.
Well, this is it. That's right. And you know what? At the moment, South Australia has nearly the whole of the government training, right? That we don't have to compete with anybody. That TAFE South Australia has been given it, and you know we cannot get people through the door for a $200 Cert 2, right? They could have a $200 Cert 2 in business, and we can't get people through the door to even talk to them. And I think what's happened is, what you were describing before, Melanie, is the ebb and flow of it all. That people had just don't, and the vet fee help, you know, or the bad news about the vet fee help. That people don't trust any training organisation, because we're all training organisations. You know, that they sometimes can't distinguish between one and another. And so people just don't trust the whole system anymore, and so they stay away even though they could be getting reasonably priced qualifications.
I think people are in the dark largely. I think there's been very little. I mean, there's been some marketing with things like the vet fee help, but that's virtually the only marketing, except for the twice-a-year marketing from North Coast TAFE, which is quite good. But not much else except for free courses this, and you could get a subsidy for that, but they're always the same courses, child certs or community services. It could be different next year. There's a lot of the new community services package out, and there are no equivalences between the new and the old certificate.
Oh, God.
So what happens to the people with the old certificate?
Well, good question. I guess it's, you know, it's current as long as they stay in the workforce, but if they ever want to come back, sorry, I haven't looked at. It's been made a much more generic package, I think, which is a bit of a worry.
It's interesting.
There'd be something on their ITAB website. They went around and did a whole lot of presentations, but what they've actually put up there to explain the differences, I haven't had a chance to look at yet. So, you know, there is generally a sense of uncertainty about, people don't know quite what they're doing, whether it's good enough. If it's not good enough, how do they improve it? How are they meeting needs? What is the government agenda? Nobody seems to know anymore what the focus is. Yeah, pessimism. That's a good word for it.
Yeah, I think a pretty apt description there, Melanie. Or just apathy.
I think there's a lot of people like us who've been in the game a long time, and it's all, you know, we've been here before. We've been around this circle ride, and maybe it's time for, you know, new ones to come through. But I don't think the policy setting is conducive to a lot of new innovation.
Look, from what we see, the young ones coming through are 30s in suits with absolutely no idea about education. And they're kind of swanning into high-level positions and making very bad decisions. And to heck with, you know, everyone else, pretty much.
Well, they've got a greenfield site in many ways, and now, you know, certainly, you know, it's.
So is it that we've ceased to become educators and we're now just a training business with the emphasis on the business?
Absolutely.
Yep.
That's the major shift then.
Well, look, it was pretty clear. I went to the Institute Managers Enterprise Award briefing, which was um, facilitated by the person who was the TAFE New South Wales representative on that with Fair Work. And I quote, "We are on track to the full commercialisation of TAFE," end quote.
Oh yeah.
So, for better or worse, that's the direction. I mean, I'll be the first to admit TAFE needed reform. I'm not disputing that things were perfect, but I think this is this is all wrong, really.
I'd like to know how they're going to account to the taxpayer for commercialising what the taxpayer already owns. I mean, I was thinking about the other day, we were talking about some of the new things that are coming for next year, the changes and so on. And I was being a bit provocative, and I said to one of my colleagues, maybe they should just sell off the campuses. If they can.
They are.
Yeah, well, I thought Maxwell would be first to go. I thought, but then what do you do? Then how do you have a public provider? Where does that money go? What happens on those sites? Maybe you could do things. I'd like to see things like job, where you could actually integrate services, especially in regional areas, where you could put your job active providers, your ACT services, your vet trainers, your business incubators, your small business chambers on site. Convert some of the class.
Look, I think this issue about sites is an interesting one. I mean, a lot of private providers simply rent sites on a sort of need-by-need basis, and there's no reason why TAFE couldn't do that either. In some ways, we've got this legacy of sites that are stuck in a particular location, and so we sort of say to students, "You must come here." We don't go to them. So I think in some ways for TAFE, our sites are a little bit of a legacy or a chain around our neck, which perhaps might allow us to think more innovatively about how we do our delivery.
Which of course means that, okay, now we forget face-to-face, all our courses will be 100% online, and which leads to, where I am, which is, essentially we're in the same position we were 15 years ago. When the magic online course first arrived, we're in exactly the same position. And what now is considered good quality is a whole stack of courses that look exactly the same, and they're all, centralised and templated, and teachers actually don't touch them apart to teaching in them. It's a really sad place that we're in. At the moment, that's 95% of my work, and I do not touch the LMS. I am working in a Word template, and and I'm kind of 2 steps down, and that's as close as I get.
And it's almost there's a race on. You see in some of the in the dual sector stuff in Victoria. You've got Swinburne online. You've got is it Universities Australia, Chisholm online. And they all want that model, Robin. They all want a kind of set and forget. And they think they're going to make money off of it. And I don't know, from where I'm sitting, it looks like they're pouring a lot of money into a system that we know doesn't work, because humans want human contact. They don't necessarily just want to be able to read off a web page. If they were going to do that, why wouldn't they just scroll the internet for them?
Well, I think it's even sadder than that. Somebody you know, we know and love well, who's in a high level position in the TAFE Institute, you know, has said that she has been told that
I've had a hiccup
the
there.
decision to put a course online is totally dependent on whether it is cheaper to run than the face-to-face option. If it is cheaper, then that's the way that you go. If it is not cheaper, then you don't do it. And the other option is to outsource it to, you know, dodgy brother, you know, online course development companies 1, 2 and 3, which purely are where we came from 12 years ago. You know, content and a quiz.
Yep.
So, you know, we're back to where we were, you know, in a long time ago. We have, you know, we're back to, you know, this ghastly place that we thought we'd moved on from.
Well, I'm laughing because Michael's just put up his Converge badge. Is that the first Converge, Michael?
I don't know, but it's a little tub of mints and there's still a few left from Converge 09.
I was asking you, I see some people from eWorks recently and asked them, you know, like, why aren't they doing something? Because we really miss, you know, we had e-days, you know, New South Wales had e-learning, and these guys had Converge, and they were fantastic networking and sharing of professional development. But they're all, eWorks don't, you know, they've got a different focus. I think they realise it's a lot of work, and it's very hard to pull it off, perhaps.
I don't think they'd get the participants. I think the people in charge of institutions now just simply would not see the value.
Yeah, they wouldn't send them. They wouldn't fund them again.
They would actually have to take time off work and fund themselves to go.
And you'd be setting people up to do and to be inspired by the sort of things that we're used to, like the, you know, the e-portfolio.
And then not be able to do a thing, yeah.
And then they're not going to be able to do it. They're not going to know where it's coming from, and they're not going to do it. And the thing that I find really sad about what Robin's saying, and I agree with her, is that when we were 15 years ago, that was an emerging market that we were trying. I saw, in a way, the framework and its principles, and a lot of people within TAFE in those roles as well. It was like a race against the growth of that market. It's who will get to the mass market first. Will it be the set and forget, click and learn, you know, read, quiz, here's your certificate, or will it be the more costly but innovative and genuinely educational and learning, with a real genuine learning experience of what we were trying to encourage people to learn to build? And I was always afraid that we would lose, and we did.
Yeah.
The set and forget won't work because it can't meet, God, don't kill me when I say this word, compliance, right? It won't meet the standards of competency-based, skills applied training and assessment. So it can't win, right? It can't win from an individual perspective where I was in a meeting, I'm borrowing this from somebody else who said, you know, when did you ever hear a student give you their money and then say, don't contact me now until I finish my qual? Right, I don't want to hear from you guys. I just want to go over there and do my training and not hear from anybody from the training organisation. So when did you ever heard a student say that? So it will come from both ends. That you won't get your completions, you won't get your re-enroll, you won't get your recommendations or referrals, and you'll certainly get a big hammer on the head. But Michael, I don't know if I did try to introduce it before, but you've been away somewhere interesting and looking at somebody else's educational approaches, and I'd love to hear some of those.
Well, we were talking about it before you came, Alison, and really it's not a completely different system. And what Vanuatu are doing is adopting pretty much whole as bolus of the Australian system, and I think to their detriment, but it's already been done. They have a BQA, a Vanuatu qualifications framework, and it's really identical. They have all the systems, all the policies, all the organisations to lock everything down and make sure it's controlled and regulated. And look, I was naive enough, perhaps optimistic enough to think that if someone like me goes out there and I said, look, there's grains of goodness in this structure, but please don't make the same mistakes we did. So I was at least able to say that to individual teachers. Just don't lose sight of the fact that you're teachers and educators. And, you know, it might fall on deaf ears, but so, Alison, not terribly different. And as I think Melanie said after I talked about it before, they're kind of back 15 years back. You know, they're back where we were. They're just at the very start of a training system that they think, or that someone has told them, needs to be regulated.
Interestingly,
I mean, looking back, that wasn't such a bad thing. I mean, for those of us who were around pre-training packages, it was a nightmare. I mean, Melanie would probably remember. You know, remember when we had to buy accredited curricula off the shelf, and there were, you know, 6 different ones, and you had no idea which were good, which were bad. You know,
what the industry wanted.
there were good things about, you know, the system that was brought in the early 90s, I guess. So, you know, having some consistency and some quality assurance is, you know, is a good thing. You just can't let it get out of control, which is what happened for us, I think.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think for me it just comes back to trust. And I know I wrote about this when I left TAFE, but that was the most significant change I saw in terms of how it had an impact on me. I agree with everything that Robin has just said. It was messy, it needed cleaning up and clearing up, streamlining, but it went too far in the regulation and control side of things. So that when I started working in the vet sector, I had an instinctive feeling, an assumed feeling around me that I was trusted, and I was. And towards the end, it was quite the reverse. I was not trusted. No one was trusted. You were controlled, checked up upon, and regulated, and that will destroy anybody, and it's done it.
But do you think that's because of the unscrupulous, you know, that we've talked about the vet fee help where, you know, these intermediaries have come in and set up systems where they've learnt how to suck absolutely massive amounts of money. There were, you know, before it was vet fee help, there was, and I'm not saying all private training organisations are bad and all public organisations are good, but before that there were training organisations where basically you came in this door, you gave them the 15 grand, they signed the paper, they gave you the parchment, and you left the other end of it. So there needs to, you know, how do you regulate? How do you not regulate while regulating?
There's degrees of regulation, and there's how much regulation. And again, this is a personal filter. I worked in professional development most of my life in TAFE, and about 10 years ago, I started to hear phrases like, "I can't come to your workshop tomorrow because we have an auditor coming. I can't come to your workshop tomorrow because we have a new training package. I can't come to your workshop," you know, fill in the blanks. People stopped coming to professional development because they no longer had the time, because all their spare time was allocated towards making sure that when and if they were regulated / audited, they were ready. And that was the death knell. I heard it the first time in the corridor of Port Adelaide TAFE, and then I heard it again, and I heard it again, and I heard it again. I thought, it's all over.
So, Michael, how is continuous improvement? How did people know, like, how did they know to move from using a typewriter to using a word processor to using a PC to using mobile in a business? Like, how did continuous improvement actually happen then before that point?
Before which point?
Before the changing, the updating of the training packages, and we've had ANTA and we've had ASQA and we've had everything in between those things. So, how did change actually happen?
As it always does, a combination of people needing to know, did it informally, probably picked up bits and pieces from formal training, but a combination of all. Maybe they did a course.
I think that, the changes came in, but the focus on the changes was quality for the students. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it was around 91, 92 that, the changes started to roll out. And right through until about 2006, sure, those changes were in place, but staff were encouraged to innovate, change their practice, try new things, because the focus for them was still on their being professional teachers and doing what was best for their students. And somewhere along the track, around about then, a bit later, maybe, a bit later, we lost that. And teachers were told that their primary duty was enrolments and forms and documentation in preference to anything that was innovative with their students. And I can't pinpoint when that happened, but somewhere along the track it happened. And it wasn't, I don't know, it is definitely compliance related, which went totally overboard. But mind you, I can remember VTE, back in the good old VTE days in New South Wales, I can remember being audited in the early 90s, and it wasn't, onerous. The pressure was on the people in the organisation who were there as coordinators and managers, and they liaised with teachers. It wasn't taking time away from the teacher's primary duty, which was their students.
You need to remember this stuff has happened across the board. It's not an education specific thing, and I might have talked in a previous podcast about how the police say the same thing. Every walk of life is the same thing. Risk aversion is a plague. This society has raging all over the place, and what happened in education has just mirrored what's happening across the board. People won't let their children walk to school anymore. Everyone's terrified.
The greatest irony in what I'm hearing you say is that the more emphasis on compliance, the worse the quality of the outcomes.
Exactly what happened, precisely.
And we went from, I remember Berwin Clayton saying that there was a pivotal moment in ANTA, training packages rolled out, and they said, we have this much we can set aside for implementation and quality continuous improvement and quality control. And they decided whether or not they would spend X amount on regulation and compliance, and the remainder, oh, thank you, I'm just being brought chocolate, and the remainder on professional development. And in her opinion, they got it completely the wrong way around. It was something like 80-20. So they, instead of putting the money into professional development to make teachers that you would then trust and give them the skills, put the money into the compliance bucket. The irony is that we've gone, spiralling down ever since.
And anybody with half a brain could have seen that what was going to happen. That's what annoys me, that we collectively didn't span. So this will not work. This is not how you treat an adult sector. However, we let it happen.
What about, on a different but maybe related tack, what about Gen Y? Remember we were all terrified coming through.
The
Ducks back.
To me? Sorry, I just turned my microphone on. It was probably me. I'll turn it off.
Lost you out.
Well, you've got to love the duck,
That's all we
really.
need. It sounds like Mr. Curly. I think we all need Mr. Curly. I need Mr. Curly in my office. No.
I think it was when I turned my mic on. Sorry, Melanie. I'm sorry.
Well, some things don't change, Alison. I remember doing a LearnScope gig where you were at an airport with a crappy microphone, so, you know, maybe some things never change.
It's not all about it's not all about quality, you know. Quantity. Robin, you've worked a bit in the higher ed sector. You know, do they grapple with the same sort of issues?
They grapple with issues, but they're not the same. So, look, I think when I was there, and it's a few years now, but when I was there, the biggest issue I saw was competing interests and really high quality lecturers who cared about good teaching, working extremely long hours because they had research demands placed on them, but they still felt a need to prepare for their students. And, you know, there were, I know for a fact that there were new teachers who were told in one particular faculty that if they had to choose between getting a research paper in or going unprepared into a lecture, they would go unprepared into a lecture because getting their research paper was the priority. So that's higher ed, and, you know, so it's a bit different, but it's lost its way too. You know, I'm pleased I don't have children now about to, you know, need to enter either sector. Hard to know where you'd send them, really.
So they have compliance issues and that constant kind of bickering of change.
Look, there were rumours, weren't there? Remember, there were rumours. I mean, I guess my most recent work was in private higher ed. So, you know, we work very closely with TEXA, and very high level compliance requirements, and writing courses, etc., was a really big deal. But public higher ed, I'm not quite sure how much of that has transferred across. I know it was going to, but I don't know that it has.
So where do we see things going? Do we see it kind of at the bottom of the valley and we're heading up, or are we still heading towards the bottom of the valley?
I think we're still heading to the bottom.
I think we've got a ways to go yet, but I think it's all going to be downhill for a little while.
As Robin said, I mean, I think it may result in, you know, green shoots growing. I hope that will be the case. Sometimes, you know, a sector that's sort of shaken so hard
needs a revolution.
Yeah, well, there'll be a revolution and regrowth and revigoration, but yeah.
Unfortunately, I think at the moment the wrong people are in positions of power. And I think the position that those people lack knowledge and lack insight, lack creativity, and any sense of innovation.
Yes, well,
so
innovation is an interesting one with the current government, with, you know, Turnbull talking about disruption and disintermediation, and you know, we need to take risk. You know, we're too risk averse, and he's kicked off this whole conversation. But you know, that's completely at odds with what's going on in certainly. Well, I can only speak for TAFE, but in TAFE, I mean, it's an innovation-free space at the moment.
Absolutely.
he restored all that money to the CSIRO.
Mm.
One possible positive is that we start breaking down the boundaries around education. And, even back in 2003, the most innovative learning programs and spaces were outside of education.
Mm.
So, maybe those of us who are passionate about this kind of stuff need to, give up on the education sector as a dead loss and actually start looking outside it in other sectors where there is an openness and a genuine interest in making change in people's lives. Whether that's, I don't know where to look, whether it's community development or health or where it might be, but what you said, Michael, about it's happening across the board in all public service. Well, maybe we need to start looking at outside of even the public service.
I think the community development space is an interesting one, Robin.
Maybe it's like a whole stack of startups that will, arrive on the scene and actually step into the space that is lacking.
I mean, what if there was an organisation, you had an organisation that you were running where you could offer highly customised training, well done, online, face-to-face, for a fee? So you basically ask the training organisation about the registration.
He found a niche,
I mean,
breastfeeding training, and did really well. Global client base, charged good fees, thousands of clients. So it was precisely that, Mel.
I was talking to the woman in charge of the hairdresser when I was getting my hair hacked off the other day, and asking her how many TAFE students she had there, and she said, "Oh, one or two." She said, "Really? But what I find is that we've got to retrain them when they get here anyway." And we've been hearing that for a long time, that that really small business in particular, I think, are not interested in the skills that we're pumping out of training packages. They want very specialised skills, and they want to be able to negotiate and customise what it is that the people coming to work with them have. So, that's I think that's probably one way that the system needs to rework itself, and the only way to do that, I think, is to dump things on its head and totally rethink. But it's going to be very expensive. Too much money is being spent.
I was looking at Michael's ruin porn picture.
Mm-hmm.
The which one?
Anyways.
Oh, Michael.
I heard a ruined porn picture.
No, Michael is almost famous in the genre. It's called ruin porn, and it's a particular genre associated with pictures of
debris.
Cities,
decay.
Buildings in various states of decay and decrepitation. And one of the pictures he put in, I've just been going through and tagging all the photos here, or all the links in the text chat with Talking VTE tag, and I came across Michael's classic ruin porn picture. So I do apologise for that distraction.
I'm quite happy for that, Steph. That's great.
That's not a photo of a TAFE near you, is it?
It quite possibly is very soon.
Can you screen share it?
I was just looking to see if I could do that. I'll see if I can.
Just on the left, you've got the green arrow.
Yeah.
Look, I think on a positive note, in the work that I do, despite the gloom that hangs over full-time staff in educational institutions, there remains some talented, enthusiastic, dedicated part-time teachers, and I think that's our future. And I would, anyone who was passionate about students and passionate about education, I would, recommend that that's the way they stay, that they stay as part-timers, that they actually get themselves into a position where they can walk in and do their teaching, hopefully under a head teacher who cares, and go home again. And the particular person I'm thinking of, she's heading into doing some online teaching, and she'll be able to do that from home. And I think she'll do a darn good job. But she needs to stay away from the total debacle and, train wreck that exists just outside her reach, really.
Yeah.
So I trust you're all seeing Michael's fantastic picture.
Is that Panorama Campus?
Yep.
Sorry, Melanie. It is Panorama Campus.
That is a TAFE near you.
It is. So I think that's probably
not near
what
me.
some of our campuses will look like in 5 years.
We've got 4 in Adelaide. Like that.
Sorry, Michael?
We have 4 in Adelaide that look like that. They've sold 4.
To who?
But the sad thing is they're not being used.
Many of them have been sold. 2 of them certainly have a for sale sign out the front still, but I don't know about the other 2.
Why are they not aged care centres or a
refugees
or
neighbourhood centres, or libraries,
or
get the refugees out of Nauru and bring them in there and train them? That'd be novel.
It is just criminal that that they are going to ruin in that way.
Yep.
Our taxpayers' dollars that work.
Indeed.
Just another, it's not a kind of positive comment, but just slightly different direction. I did a Moodle workshop yesterday for a small RTO here in Adelaide, Relationship Australia, Alison. I did a session with them yesterday. And I kind of did my usual, take on how Moodle and learning management systems should be used, student-centered learning, user-generated content, have students engaged. And these lecturers were going, you're right. Because all they've been doing is using Articulate storyline, dumping in a Moodle, the occasional quiz, and it just actually hadn't occurred to them that there was another way that might engage people more. So I thought that was interesting. And these weren't young people necessarily. They'd been training for a long time, and it just sort of me standing there and saying, well, why don't you try this? Was like, good idea. I hadn't thought of that. And I was out shaking my head, thinking, there's lots of people around who haven't even got to the point of being able to make a decision one way or the other. They just accept the gospel as it's been given to them when they sign up with the organisation.
Yeah.
And if they're not given an opportunity to think about it and given a bit of training on how to do that, it won't happen.
Indeed. Well, we're at about
on
1
a-
hour.
I was going to say, just on a positive note, as Robin was saying, one of the things they're aiming for now for New South Wales is a 65% completion rate, traineeships and apprenticeships. So that's going to be interesting to see how we get there.
Yeah, right.
But at least they're trying. They've set a target, and there's some fresh enthusiasm, I think, because we are now in a department that actually values state training services a lot more than the education department did.
It's pretty low though, isn't it? I mean, really, when you think about it, that's a low figure.
Well, it's a high from where we are.
Oh, well, maybe so. People knock private RTOs, but I came from a private RTO where our completion rate was constantly over 90%.
We're talking. I'm talking about traineeships in particular.
Yeah, I know, but it should be higher because they're engaged and they're actually, got their hands on, they're doing something.
Yes, but are they? A lot of them aren't there because they're wanting to be there. It just actually comes as part of the job, and they're not committed to the vocation in any case.
Well, what's the employer doing?
So,
They're getting cheap labour.
That's right.
And there's a real dogmatic, master apprentice. So there's a whole range. NCVR has done a whole heap of research around what the issues are there. And it's interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day. Who was it? That was saying they wish they had. It was somebody who works at Holden's, believe it or not, who is in their mid to late 50s and now wished that they had done a trade that they could fall back on in some respects, but didn't at the time think being paid a pittance was worth it when they could be earning reasonable money in a factory type environment. So there's a whole range of issues around that compared to whatever Robin, and I agree, I think that you'll find a lot of private RTOs probably equal or exceed what happens in the public sector, and there's a percentage that rot the system, and they're very small, but they do it very big and very loud and ruin it for everybody else.
They're criminals.
Yes.
Criminals, that's the ones.
Yes.
But do they get locked up?
No, of course not.
And until they do, we'll stay on this.
When I see Eddie Obeid go to jail, then I know maybe the tide has changed. But no.
And the shareholders who are getting the money. So somebody was saying that one of the shareholders in one of these rorting RTOs for the vet fee help are people like the ex-president of the AFL, Andrew Demetrius or whatever his name is, and ex-politicians, somebody Dawson, and they're really high-profile people.
Dawkins in the case of vocation.
So it's really high
Ex-Labor politicians in on the act.
Yeah, and somebody said, well, if you're getting 100% or 110% of return on your investment, that's pretty good. But when you're getting 300 or 400% return on your investment, wouldn't you start to question that maybe things aren't quite what they should be?
Oh, like you mean becoming a millionaire in 12 months, hitting the BRW rich list.
Yep. Because we all know training's such a lucrative area.
That's
not.
right. Well, clearly is for some.
Only if you cheat.
Yeah, well, that's right.
So, Michael, when are we starting the Vanuatu Vet Association?
I'm going to wait and see whether or not I have a... I'm not careful how I say this. There are some other organisations at work in Vanuatu who are trying to counteract the sudden and dramatic impact of the VQA. I want to see them get a little bit of a bigger role in what's going there before I'm going to commit one way or the other. There is hope. It has been recognised by other players that they should not jump holus bolus into the equality framework yet, or
Well,
just ease themselves in. So I may join this society, but not yet.
sounds like we might need a field trip next year.
Okay, sounds like a good idea.
All right. Well, we're at 1 hour, so over the 1 hour, so we probably should wrap it up. So anyway, we were going to talk about a post talking VTE, but perhaps we can do that off air about whether this podcast has a life after VET, given that many of us, perhaps some of us, will no longer be in VET. Not that we necessarily could talk about it, but I guess that I did have on the agenda about possibly broadening the horizons of the podcast.
Can I jump in?
Very travelled entrepreneurs. Yeah.
I think there is a vacuum that could be filled, seized. There are all these Institute of Public Affairs and these think tanks whose names I forget, but they're always, they're all got spokespeople who are very far to the right and look about 12 and say things like private is always best. And I think maybe, we need to aim high and tank. Because then if you're a think tank, you sound important, and you must know things, and there's a wealth of research that NCVR would love to bring to public attention and government attention, and so we could dip into their vaults and maybe present, then we could become consultants to policy, to the government, and maybe change the policies.
Melanie, I think you should just enter politics, as was your plan. We will depend on you.
You fix it.
I thought I had to be a Pollyanna at the end.
Good.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up. And look, thanks everyone for coming along to the very, very last podcast for 2015. We didn't have many, but they were all good. And I guess we should say hi and goodbye to Vance, who I know listens to this podcast. He's the one loyal subscriber. Thank you, Vance. You're a champ. But and I know there are lots of other listeners. In fact, I was on a recruitment panel recently, and they obviously Googled me, and he said, "Oh, I love your podcast." I thought, "Oh dear, no, it's good or a bad thing." Someone on the panel says that. I thought to myself, probably I was the only panel member who was actually Googleable. So I felt that's something anyway, if nothing else. Anyway, so look, thanks everyone, and Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steph. Everybody, nice to talk to you.
Lovely to hear from you again, Michael. Talk to you soon, Steph and Rob.
Yeah, have a good break.
Bye.
Bye.